The judge says if Singh does not get picked up by August 27th, there will have to be another court appearance. He says this is to monitor Singh closely. Right now, he's being held on no bail. I'm live in Stockton. Roxanne Elias, ABC 10.
Yeah, we know, Roxanne, there's a lot of eyes on this case. We'll be following it every step of the way. Roxanne, thank you for the update.
Hours passed after the Florida Turnpike crash. Investigators pieced together the chain of events, and what they discovered was a clear reminder of how one risky maneuver can put dozens of lives at risk. The semi-truck had been moving steadily, northbound in the right lane, when the driver decided to attempt a U-turn through an area marked only for official use. These crossovers exist only for patrol cars, ambulances, and maintenance vehicles because they are built with safety controls in mind, not for massive trucks that need extra room to swing wide and carry tons of weight. The driver, perhaps thinking he could save time by cutting across, began steering his vehicle into the path of oncoming traffic. The sheer size of the truck meant it took many seconds to block all lanes, and that delay turned the roadway into a trap for anyone approaching from behind the minivan. Traveling in the far left lane had no chance to anticipate such an obstacle, because who expects a huge semi-truck to be sprawled across the entire highway in broad daylight? And the tragic impact was inevitable, as the minivan slammed into the trailer. The force of the collision echoed across the asphalt, shaking drivers who witnessed the event and leaving survivors with images they will never forget. Witnesses later told authorities that everything happened in a blur. One moment, cars were moving smoothly at highway speed, and the next there was a wall of steel and tires cutting across with no room for escape. The aftermath left drivers shaken as traffic ground to a halt. Sirens blared and helicopters circled above. The emergency crews worked quickly, but nothing could undo the moment that had already stolen 3 lives for the families of the victims. News of the crash spread with devastating speed calls were made to loved ones. Homes were filled with grief and communities mourned the loss of 3 individuals who had simply been traveling like anyone else on a Sunday morning. Now questions turned toward accountability. Was the truck driver negligent? Was it a lapse in judgment or a deliberate attempt to bypass rules meant for safety? These were the issues investigators now had to answer with a full inquiry. Underway officers measured every angle, reviewed dash cam footage, and interviewed drivers who had witnessed the illegal maneuver. The goal was to piece together an objective account that could guide whether charges should be filed against the driver, and at the same time, local media outlets picked up the story with headlines, warning of the dangers of reckless maneuvers on high-speed highways. Anchors described the scene, reporters spoke to officials, and analysts explained how semis require more room and time to turn safely than passenger vehicles. This part of the story became not just about one crash, but about the larger issue of road safety for everyone who uses highways every day. Experts highlighted how important it is to enforce rules about restricted crossovers because those rules exist to prevent tragedies like this one. Highway patrol officers reminded the public that ignoring safety zones can cause catastrophic consequences, especially when heavy commercial vehicles are involved. And so while the road was cleared and traffic eventually returned to normal, the scars remained, both physical in the damaged barriers and emotional in the families who had lost their loved ones. The Florida Turnpike has seen many accidents, but the one that occurred on August 12th will be remembered as one of the most devastating, because it shows how a single decision made in a split second can change countless lives forever. The accident involved a semi-truck, a massive tractor trailer that was being driven by a young 25-year-old man originally from Punjab. He was not alone in the cab of the truck. A 28-year-old companion rode with him, and together they were traveling northbound on the busy stretch of the turnpike as the traffic moved steadily along. Witnesses recall the semi shifting in a way that seemed unusual. Instead of continuing in its designated lane, the driver began preparing to cross lanes. His intention was to make a U-turn in a section of the road marked clearly as official use. Only this was not an area meant for normal traffic. It was restricted for emergency vehicles and authorized personnel. The signs were visible. The warnings were in place, but in that moment, for reasons investigators are still trying to piece together, the truck driver attempted the maneuver across the wide highway stretching from the right lane all the way toward the left lanes. At the exact same time, a northbound minivan driven by a 54-year-old man from Miami and carrying 2 passengers, a 30-year-old man from Florida City and a 37-year-old woman from Pompano Beach, was traveling in the left lane at highway speeds. There was almost no reaction time. The minivan driver had seconds, if not less, to recognize the looming wall of steel. That was the semi cutting across the lanes in front of him. The impact that followed was described by witnesses as catastrophic. The sheer force of the crash between the smaller passenger vehicle and the towering, fully loaded tractor-trailer was overwhelming. The minivan was crushed, its front end obliterated on impact to 2 of the passengers. The younger man and the woman died instantly, their lives ending in that single violent moment. While the driver fought for survival, he was rushed to the hospital by emergency responders who worked tirelessly to save him. But the injuries he sustained were far too severe, and tragically, he passed away later, leaving families in shock, grief, and disbelief. The driver of the truck and his passenger walked away without serious injuries, though. Shaken, they had caused a chain of events that devastated multiple families and brought traffic to a standstill. On one of the busiest highways in Florida, emergency crews closed off lanes, police directed vehicles into detours, and investigators documented every mark, every skid, every detail of the crash scene. Local media captured the aftermath, broadcasting images of mangled metal, flashing lights, and long lines of stranded cars, while reporters reminded viewers of the strict rules in place regarding official use-only sections on highways. Rules that exist precisely to prevent tragedies like this one as news spread. The story resonated with drivers everywhere because it highlighted the risks of reckless maneuvers on high-speed roads and the devastating consequences of ignoring road signs. Investigators from the Florida Highway Patrol immediately began their work, seeking to establish not only what happened, but why and whether criminal charges would follow. They interviewed witnesses, reviewed surveillance and dash camera footage, and examined the truck for possible mechanical issues. Though the leading theory remained clear that the accident was the result of human decision-making, a choice to make an illegal U-turn in a place where it was never permitted and never safe. Families of the victims were left to cope with unimaginable grief. 3 lives cut short in an instant. Communities mourning the sudden loss of friends, neighbors, and loved ones, and the broader public left with a chilling reminder of just how fragile life can be on the open road. In the days that followed, roadside memorials appeared with flowers, photographs, and candles placed near the site of the crash. Drivers passing by slowed down, some in silence, others whispering prayers for the souls lost in the accident, while safety advocates pointed to the need for stricter enforcement and education so that such reckless behavior could be reduced. The incident has since become part of a larger conversation about highway safety, about the responsibilities of professional drivers, and about the need for all motorists to respect restrictions and traffic laws, because highways are not forgiving places. And a single wrong move can carry consequences far beyond what anyone imagines when they first turn the wheel. This tragic accident on Florida's Turnpike unfolded when a semi-truck driver made a dangerous and illegal U-turn in a restricted official use-only area, and in doing so, he steered the tractor-trailer across several active northbound lanes of traffic where vehicles were moving at high speed. The truck was driven by a 25-year-old man from Punjab, and his passenger was 28 years old, both of whom survived without major injuries. But the decision to cut across the highway created a deadly situation. At the very same moment, a northbound minivan traveling in the left lane approached and had no time or space to avoid the massive vehicle that suddenly blocked its path. The collision was catastrophic. The sheer size and weight of the semi compared to the smaller minivan meant that the impact left little chance of survival for the people inside. 3 lives were lost. A 30-year-old man from Florida City, a 37-year-old woman from Pompano Beach, and a 54-year-old man from Miami. 2 of them passengers died instantly, while the driver of the minivan fought for his life and was rushed to the hospital, but sadly passed away from his injuries. Later, emergency responders flooded the area, closing off parts of the turnpike, causing traffic jams and delays as authorities investigated what had gone wrong. Officials confirmed that the U-turn attempt was not only unlawful, but also extremely unsafe, especially on a busy interstate where vehicles travel at high speeds. Local media covered the scene, widely reporting on how quickly a single reckless maneuver can lead to devastating consequences. Investigators are now focused on determining liability and whether the truck driver will face charges. This case is a sobering reminder of the dangers of making such maneuvers on high-speed roads and how one mistake can ripple into a tragedy affecting families, communities, and countless lives forever changed. On a warm August day, the Florida Turnpike was busy as always with vehicles rushing northbound when a large semi-truck driven by a 25-year-old man from Punjab carrying along a 28-year-old passenger was making its way up the right lane. And in that moment, what seemed like an ordinary drive would soon become a tragic story that people across the state would talk about for weeks, because the driver decided to attempt a U-turn in a spot that was clearly marked for official use. only a place meant strictly for police and emergency vehicles, not for general traffic, and especially not for massive tractor trailers. And as the truck began to slowly edge across the highway lanes, the risk grew larger with every passing second, since big trucks are never quick to accelerate, and their size makes them almost impossible to move swiftly across multiple lanes of high-speed traffic. And at the very same time, a family in a northbound minivan was traveling in the left lane heading forward with no idea of the danger that was about to unfold. The minivan could not have predicted that a giant trailer would suddenly cut across its path, and in that split second, there was simply no way to stop the vehicle in time. Because when you are driving at highway speeds, even a second of delay can change everything forever. And so the impact happened fast and with devastating force, leaving the minivan crumpled from the collision. The crash was so powerful that 2 passengers inside the minivan, a 30-year-old man from Florida City and a 37-year-old woman from Pompano Beach, lost their lives instantly, while the third occupant, a 54-year-old man from Miami who was driving, fought for survival as emergency services rushed to get him to a nearby hospital. But despite the quick response, he too passed away from the injuries, leaving behind not only the wreckage of twisted metal on the highway, but also the sorrow of families who would never see their loved ones again. And yet the driver of the semi-truck and his passenger survived without serious injuries, which only deepened the heartbreak of the incident, because it raised the painful question of how one dangerous decision can ripple out and cause irreversible damage. The Florida Turnpike was shut down for hours, as police, firefighters, and paramedics worked tirelessly to manage the scene, clear the wreckage, and direct traffic that had backed up for miles, causing delays that stretched far into the day. And drivers who passed the site could only look on with shock as they saw the scale of destruction, realizing how fragile life can be when reckless moves are made on high-speed highways. And while the investigators began their careful work, noting down every skid mark, measuring the positions of the vehicles, and recording witness statements, the broader message started to echo across local news and community conversations that official use crossovers exist for a reason, and when ignored, they can turn into sites of tragedy. This first part of the story shows us not only how quickly an ordinary trip can turn into disaster, but also how important it is to respect the rules of the road, because they are there to protect lives and prevent exactly the kind of devastation that unfolded that day.